My fellow Canadians, my name is Samuels. I stand before you today to announce that I am seeking to be nominated as a candidate in the recently announced Liberal leadership race. I present my plan and my credentials to help advance that plan. I seek your consideration on whether or not you support my plan. With that said, if you support what I have to say, I respectfully invite you to participate in the Liberal Party leadership campaign that I seek to present to you today. We need volunteers and other support which will enable us to reach the Liberal Party executive's tall order of $350,000 deposit in a relatively little time in order to formally enter the race. If you believe that my plan is one that you support, I believe that together we may yet achieve our goal to formally become a Liberal leadership campaign which will be positioned to be which will have a credible position in the Liberal leadership race to make a difference and to hopefully achieve the results that we seek to achieve. I seek the nomination to be the leader of the Liberal Party of Canada because, in my view, and perhaps in your view as well, no one, as of yet at least, in the Liberal Party has sought the leadership of this once great party who seems to be able or willing to rise to the following fundamental challenges that we now all face as Canadians. Challenge one, our society has become arguably in a state of disarray due to the negligence of a government which has turned its back on the values which defines us both as a party and as Canadians. We need a leader who will therefore provide a roadmap to take us out of the darkness that's been thrust upon us by the prevailing leadership in the brightness that we seek to achieve that we once had when we were once declared in the early 90s to be the best country in the world. Challenge two, we as Canadians face the greatest threat to our sovereignty, arguably, since the War of 1812 and since World War II. Like our adversary in 1812, the new adversary seeks to use conquest to achieve their ambitions to expand an empire. Like our adversary in World War II, they seek to withdraw maps as a prelude to economic and military conquests and relies on their personal charm and charisma from their own compatriots to support jingoism and self-serving ambitions. The new adversary, like the old adversary, is seeking to present a ideal of national liberation while in power and while extolling their true agenda, which is to advance the desires of a political military industrial complex. As a candidate for the nomination of the Liberal Party, I present my credentials to you so that you can decide whether I am qualified or not for this role as a servant to the public interest and the Liberal Party. I'm a consultant in human rights, business, and constitutional law. I'm an alumnus of the University of Toronto and its international relations program at Trinity College and the labor management relations program, which is had been a collaborative degree between the Rotman's Faculty of Management and the Center of Industrial Relations. My studies also includes my master's activities at the Norman Paterson School of International Affairs at Carleton University before I was accepted into a PhD program in political science. I have taught human rights and business law at the community college university level. My involvement with the Liberal Party of Canada dates back to the pivotal 1988 federal election, which is sometimes referred to as the free trade election. That was the time as liberals, we acted as liberals with an unswerving commitment to the values that I seek to re-champion in a new and rejuvenated Liberal Party of Canada. At that time, I had met John Turner before the 1980 election at a speech that he gave at Trinity College on free trade, so-called free trade. In that speech, John Turner very prophetically sought to warn Canadians that so-called free trade would be a prelude to annexation by the United States, and the recent comments that has been made south of the border has suggested that John Turner, the former Right Honorable and late John Turner, was right in his prophetic concerns and comments during the 1988 federal election. My fitness to serve in Parliament was certified by two of the greatest champions of Canadian sovereignty, notably Mel Hurtig, when he had championed a splinter party in response to the threat of free trade, Mel Hurtig, and also the late Honorable Paul Halier, who had been a former Liberal cabinet minister, who had also championed Canadian sovereignty. Both Mel Hurtig and the Honorable Paul Halier endorsed me to be prospective member of Parliament. I seek to rekindle the values of our party while bringing a sense of urgency to the critical commitments and challenges that we now face as a party and as a nation. The values and commitments which I view as vital that we refocus and retool our efforts as a nation, as a party, are the following. Number one, Canada as a just society. Number two, national unity. Number three, the role of the Commonwealth. Number four, the role of Canada as an international champion of peace. Number five, the defense of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Number six, which is related to is what I would call Canada First, predicated on the resolve to defend our nation, a resolve to affirm Canadian sovereignty. I will now refer to these values and break them down a little bit further. Value one is that I believe that if we are to face up to the critical challenges that we now face, we must, as a party, begin to re-champion these fundamental six core attributes, six core principles, which I believe will lead us out of the darkness that we now find ourselves as a party and as a nation, pursuant to challenge number one on our threat to sovereignty. Value number two, just society. This is a Liberal Party ideal which was first championed by former Prime Minister Pierre Elliott Trudeau in 1968. At that time, the former Prime Minister Trudeau had said during the 1968 Liberal Party leadership campaign, "For me, this beautiful, rich, and energetic country of ours can become the model of a just society in which every citizen will enjoy his or her fundamental rights, in which two great linguistic communities and peoples of many cultures will live in harmony. C'est ça le Canada." This is a fundamental value which we as a party have lost track of. The Canada today is a Canada which has growing homelessness, growing economic disparity, growing sense of social despair and alienation. We have lost our values with respect to the need to affirm the just society. This is fundamental if we are to re-inspire the trust of Canadians, re-inspire the trust of fellow liberals that the just society, as echoed by former Pierre Elliott Trudeau, the just society is an inviolable and critical foundation as to who we are as Canadians, as to the values that our party stands up for. And this is a value which I hold dear and vital, that I will seek to affirm and defend through the policies of a Liberal government that I seek to champion. Indeed, the Canada of Pierre Elliott Trudeau was the Canada which did not have the homelessness that we now face ourselves. It was a Canada of much differently in terms of its what we see today as far as the type of alienation and decline that we see in the people's ability to put food on the table, to seek shelter, to do the things that are vital to our sense of human dignity and our sense of the necessities of life. Number two, national unity. Unfortunately, the prevailing government has been negligent with respect to a sense of who we are as a nation. And as a result, we have growing sense of alienation in the West. We have a growing sense of alienation in Quebec with the rise of the separatist nationalists there. We have also a sense of alienation in the East with respect to growing disparity. We, as a Liberal leader, I will be committed to refocus on national unity, which will be oriented towards the need for all people coast to coast to coast to have a sense of value in the Confederation, to have a sense of meaning in Confederation, to have a sense of purpose that we all share as Canadians collectively. We cannot allow an environment in which the politics that we seek to pursue at the national level turns a blind eye to the vital need to have a nation that we have a sense of united, a sense of common purpose based upon, predicated on the values of a just society and the values of the need to recognize that as a confederation, we are bringing together of different regions, different provinces, and as the Liberal leader, I will seek to serve those different regions and provinces in a manner which will pull together the nation rather than allow it to spiral into a sense of dissolution. Number two, the role of the Commonwealth. This is also an aspect that has been neglected for too long. The Commonwealth is vital to our sense of being a country in the first place. The role of the Commonwealth and the role of Britain specifically was critical to our ability to defend ourselves in the War of 1812. And the Commonwealth has been under is an important aspect of our national identity. The Commonwealth has been, therefore, a vital part of who we are as a nation, as our sense of our history. The Commonwealth has also been a vital military protector in helping to guarantee our sovereignty. I seek to rejuvenate the role of the Commonwealth, both as a military cooperative defense organization to affirm our national sovereignty, our ability to protect ourselves and assert our sovereignty at all levels with respect to the challenges that we now face with respect to challenge number two, by both asserting and inviting the support of the Commonwealth with respect to the defense of our borders, as well as the Commonwealth as driving an environment of fair trade among Commonwealth nations, which will secure the well-being of Canadians as well as members of the Commonwealth that gives a sense of purpose to who we are as a nation with respect to our identity in the Commonwealth. So The Commonwealth will be an integral part of my sense of facing up to challenges number 1 and number 2. Number 4 is the sense of peacekeeping. This has been a neglect by successive governments in Canada. Canada's identity as helping to bring and maintain peace in the world. As Canadians, we have come to expect, with respect to our sense of being a middle power, the importance of the Canada to be seen as providing a constructive role in international affairs. There's been a proliferation of wars taking place, as everybody has witness of. Canada needs to reassert its role in trying to bring peace throughout the world, and to be there if a country so asks us to be there as a peacekeeper. We need to put the resources needed to assert our peacekeeping role. We need to articulate a foreign policy which proactively seeks to bring about peace in regions of the world which are currently being ravaged by war unnecessarily, bringing atrocious consequences to the loss of human life, the loss of the people fighting on both sides of the conflict, and the destruction of the environment which war brings as a result of the use of various munitions which are not good for the environment and not good for the people. So that is also a focus of my policy as prospective Liberal leadership candidate. In Canada, the Liberal Party has turned its back on in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which was inspired by the Pierre Elliott Trudeau, who inspired the whole Charter of Rights and Freedoms based upon his values of a just society. As a party, we must refocus our sense of purpose and value in the importance of free speech to break down a censorship complex which has repressed the very values that our party ought to be defending. I therefore support the need we cannot in any way, shape, or form be supporting a censorship regime, the repression of free speech, the repression of social media, or any other kind of repression which can in any way, shape, or form make us appear or resemble a dictatorial regime. This is not who we are as supposed to be as Liberals, and this is not what we expect as Canadians from the Liberal Party. So once again, the unswerving commitment and defense of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. As prospective Liberal leadership candidate, I also support a Canada First policy. The Canada First policy is not a selfish policy focused on jingoism or focused in some sort of selfish focus on the rest of the world. Our Canada First policy is focused on the need, first of all, to assert Canadian sovereignty, and second of all, to have an immigration policy which invites people from all around the world to become Canadians in our dynamic and prosperous multicultural society, but at the same time not having an immigration policy which turns our back to Canadian citizens who are expecting a certain quality of life. Our Canada First policy that I propose is one in which we focus on making sure that we first support the needs of Canadians. I support the eradication of homelessness with respect to a commitment to the just society, which I will articulate a little bit more. I support making sure that as a quality of life, once we've reached that quality of life which we seek to maintain and uphold, it is that then we will be in the position to accept immigration and invite immigrants coming to Canada, which can expect a certain quality of life, and so that we don't have a society where we have Canadians struggling to survive, and we're increasing immigration in a way which provides alienation and social dislocation. So Canada First, it means assert our sovereignty and make sure that the needs of Canadians are being met at all levels, and that immigration policy must be commensurate of that. Those are the pivots of my policies. With respect to the need for now I will go further into the values of break down what in my view is an important value which we've been neglecting is a just society. First of all, with respect to my pathway for a just society, I seek to, as prospective Liberal leadership candidate, pursue this in a multi-tiered way. Our first commitment with respect to the just society needs to be the fully integrating, first of all, the findings of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission as part of a rejuvenated federal Indigenous policy. The current government, with respect to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, integrated the need to fly our flag at half-mast, but seem to have not integrated the rest of the policies that we need to move forth if we are to give a sense of integrity to our commitments to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We therefore support the integration of all the recommendations of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I also support the need for the abrogation of the Indian Act and the replacement of the Indian Act with a non-colonial based policy, which will support a climate of self-governance constitutionally, and to provide the resources to Indigenous communities so that we can ensure that all Indigenous communities across Canada will have full access to public health care and a healthy environment to grow their families, all full access to public health care, which is a guarantee of our universal public health care system, and full access to clean running water so that the reserves that First Nations are on no longer resemble so-called third world countries. There is simply no excuse in a country of ours that First Nations, that we can thank our sense of sovereignty. If it was not for the First Nations and the support to the defense of Canadian sovereignty in the War of 1812, we would not have a nation. The First Nations are fundamental to our sense of national independence, our identity, who we are as Canadians, and we must ensure that the First Nations across Canada, Indigenous communities, are supported with respect to the need for appropriate resources that will ensure their affirmation of their quality of life at all levels, which has been and the governments have been far too negligent into ensuring that this takes place. My secondary focus, not secondary, but my supplementary focus rather, with respect to the affirmation of the quality of life in the Indigenous communities, is that, as I mentioned before, I support the eradication of homelessness. There's simply no excuse that people in our nation are living the way they do, taking food from looking for food and foraging in garbage cans, living on the street, in shelters which all sorts of potentially communicable diseases are running rampant, and in conditions which they are, in order to escape the terrible conditions that they face, are abusing various substances. There is no excuse for that. My Liberal leadership campaign is completely supporting the focus on social housing. I seek to pursue the right of Canadians to be provided with housing as a right, and to give focus on a public policy which supports that right. There's simply no excuse for the need for Canadians to be going to food banks and the need and this and the Canadians living on the streets. So my policy with respect to the affirmation of the Just Society will give immediate attention to the growing poverty crisis, which is no excuse in our current society, which will, and the Canadians who are living on the street. This is a loss immediately to our economy, because I'm sure that the majority of Canadians, would want to, who are living on the street, would like to have access to opportunities, but our current policies with respect to access to the opportunities are focusing on an immigration policy, which once more is dysfunctional and has caused social dislocation, which needs to be redressed. So the Just Society is also focused on the need to support the affirmation of a context of rights for all people, of all minorities. I would work as Liberal leader. I would constructively work with the provinces in federal-provincial relations to ensure that not only we are appropriately managing and redressing human rights issues and concerns and the lack of potential resources in the Canadian Human Rights Commission, but that also provincial human rights commissions are provided with the resources in order to make sure that the rights of minorities, the rights of women, the rights of all peoples who are potentially disenfranchised by egregious violations of their rights under the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. I seek to establish a regime in which will support the affirmation of these rights in the context of the pursuit of a just society. Number two is my commitment to national unity, which I focused on. I believe that this is the separatism has been allowed to regrow in Quebec because of the negligence of the government in redressing national unity, redressing the ignorance that is taking place with respect to the leaders of the separatist cause, which are spreading ignorance in their efforts to exploit alienation in Quebec. I will make one notable historical reference that I will make in my particular presentation is that the Canada is not an alien, does not have an alien relationship to the peoples of Quebec, particularly the Francophones, and particularly the maple leaf is not an alien symbol. In fact, the maple leaf was created by the Saint Jean Baptiste Society to champion the Canadian identity relative to the fleur-de-lis, which is a colonial symbol. The fleur-de-lis is a French monarchical symbol of colonial repression in New France, and the Saint Jean Baptiste Society, by developing our Canadian maple leaf, which is adorned on the Canadian maple leaf flag, sought to champion this Canadian identity relative to the fleur-de-lis. The separatists in Quebec fly the fleur-de-lis. While speaking against colonialism, they are in fact endorsing the colonialism of the French monarchy and spreading ignorance that as Canadians, the whole sense of Canadian identity is alien to the Francophone experience, the Francophone identity. It is the Francophones themselves in Quebec since the 16th, 17th century, which were among the first Canadians who referred to themselves as Canadiens long before there was a confederation. So the separatist cause, the separatist leaders who continue to spread this idea that Canadien and the maple leaf are that the Francophones should separate from the Canadian identity are dealing with ignorance, but unfortunately we do not have a government, a Liberal Party leadership that is able to articulate that and have allowed the separatist cause to spread the type of ignorance which is now resulting in the growing sense of separatism in Quebec. So That is one aspect of national unity which currently confronts us, and I seek to ensure that all regions and all provinces of Canada will be fully served as members, equal members of the Canadian Federation. The role of the Commonwealth. King Charles III remains the head of state of Canada, and we must, and our relationship to the head of state has served us well, as I mentioned, in the War of 1812, when we were faced with the critical military conquest challenge to our sovereignty. I seek to, as Liberal leader, to support the importance of the ability to reinvest in the type of resources at all levels of our Canadian Armed Forces, Navy, Army, and Air Forces that will support the defense of our sovereignty at all levels, and to seek the support of our Commonwealth partners in ensuring that the sense of sovereignty, the challenge to our sovereignty that we now imminently face, that to reassure Canadians that through our Commonwealth partners, we will be in a better position to ensure that there is not a challenge to our sovereignty. And as a sovereign nation, we must be prepared to assert our capacity to defend ourselves through the support of our Commonwealth partners and our Canadian Armed Forces with respect to our vital interest in defending our sense of nationhood. We, as Canadians, should not in any way take lightly any challenges or threats of annexation. That should never be taken lightly. It should never be taken lightly. Any efforts to redraw maps. We knew what happened the last time a world leader in World War II decided to redraw maps. That did not go very well and was a prelude to military conquest and a military conquest agenda. I thank Canadians and Liberal Party members listening to my presentation today. If you have any interest or any comments of support or otherwise on my proposed and seeking of the Liberal leadership, I invite you to send an email to Cosmopolita, COS, M as in mother, O, P as in Peter, OLITA _RC at yahoo.com. That's Cosmopolita, COSMOPOLITA _RC at yahoo.com. I ask you to give your comments and potential support to the Samuels campaign. I thank you very much for listening today.